For those that, have experience with different forms and levels of abuse and perhaps don't have a clear memory, might not even have the words to describe, but to your point, it lives in their body and it's to some extent running a lot of their day-to-day life and how they relate and not relate. So I'm curious how people can connect with those that they feel safe with in a way. What is that process as they are healing and as they are kind of uncovering the points at which need tending? I guess in that process, how do you relate? Because I can imagine it's incredibly lonely as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to speak to the point as being someone who was very generally limited memory about my childhood, and I do get asked often, like, do we have to know the details? How important is it to go back and unearth, kind of the what happened and really have that clarity? And some of us don't have access. I mean, I am someone who, no matter how hard I try, how many pictures I look at of my childhood, I don't have those kind of flashes or that movie screen of what my life was like. And a large part of it was because, like I just described, I was so disconnected. And one of the things that happens as our stress becomes more consistent and goes up with cortisol being released throughout our body, the more cortisol running through our bloodstream, the more a particular part of our brain called the hippocampus is affected. And the hippocampus is where we store our memories. So there's a very real physiological reason, in addition to, like we were just describing with you, Chris, right? I'm not fully present. If we're not fully present for something, it's going to be really hard to reference back that particular movie screen image because our consciousness was elsewhere. And then if we couple that with all of the cortisol of this stressful experience that's raging through our bloodstream, now we actually physiologically can't remember because our hippocampus is impacted. So to simply answer your question, we're still carrying the memory in our emotional responses, sometimes in our sense of self that we've now created, the beliefs that we have, how we cope, how we show up, how we relate to others in our relationships. So the best place then to start is we don't actually have to go back, unearth the trauma, view it again, and have a different emotional reaction. We can just start. And the best place to start is to become really aware. And the first section of my new workbook is all about physical habits with an emphasis on the nervous system. So really becoming conscious of these different sensations and indicators that my nervous system is actually dysregulated in our body. And then from there, we can create the safety to begin to unpack the deeper feelings that are active in that moment. Because when we're feeling threatened, we're usually feeling something else deeper. We're feeling unworthy. We're feeling angry. We're feeling grief. We're feeling sad. We're feeling something else. And then that could give us the path forward.
Because I think in the world, it's like, I want to heal. I want to, people have these ideas of what they want to do and how they want to live. And it has been the work of where I'm like, oh, I want to have intimate relationships, or I want to be able to speak confidently through conflict, or I want to be able to navigate conflict and be in my body. Because, before it's like as soon as something happens, I'm like, bye. I would just be like, oh my God, what do I have to do to make this end? Couldn't really stick up for myself, or I'd be like a fucking viper. And so I had to pull back and be like, okay, what's going on here? Like, I'm not doing this. What is the thing? And it was the nervous system and unlocking the ability to be in my body and regulate my nervous system in those moments that has helped me. So I think this is so important. I'm so glad we're talking about this because it really is the part that unlocks so many different aspects of healing and healthy relationships and a healthy life. So what are some other ways that you see the nervous system playing a role in people's lives that you serve?
I mean, again, it is directing all of our reactions. And I think relationships is typically the immediate next conversation. I mean, to speak to your point, the way you're describing it, I become reactive, right? I kind of do these things, and our intimate, close, even friendship, platonic relationships are usually where we meet feelings. We have interpersonal conflict. We're trying to navigate two different perspectives and, negotiate what choices we're going to make sure that we're honoring each individual. And that's usually then the space where our nervous system is impacting how we're showing up. Outside even of those moments of reactivity when we're screaming and yelling at someone we love and then feeling so shameful after the fact, or we're icing them and not speaking and giving the silent treatment, we feel bad after the fact. I think it's the more consistent ways too that we've adapted. Some of us have taken on ways of being. We become a people pleaser, a yes person, fawning, serving someone else to keep ourselves safe before the conflict even exists. So I think that's another really foundational piece of the impact of our nervous systems, because our nervous system back when we're children actually needed a separate nervous system to co-regulate with. We need an attuned caregiver. We need someone else to help us create safety. And when we don't have that, we're going to adapt. We're going to find a way to create some semblance of safety the best way that we can. So now if we're trying to relate to another person, not only does it become more likely that we kind of fall back into those habitual patterns, I mean, even saying the word like disconnection, I said that earlier, our ability to even connect with another individual is really connected to our nervous system. And if we're not in our body, to speak to your point, Krista, of how important it is, if we're not in our body, if we're not connected to our own self, our own heart, we're not going to be able to give love or receive love or connection from another person. Yet, I think for many of us, and I've done this throughout my 20s, pointed the finger at these emotionally unavailable, not deep people that are the problem in my relationship, not understanding that I wasn't available for emotional connection. I wasn't making myself vulnerable by sharing my deeper feelings because that felt too unsafe. I was demanding someone come close and hug me, and I had my hand out, not allowing them.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose, and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.